Good morning. This is Steve Hodgson, Modern Asset Management, with Jim Myers and Dion DiPioli today. And we're going to review some live assets and do some evaluation, have a nice discussion, and see what kind of information we can share with everybody. So here we are. If you guys want to turn on your cameras just for a second.
I'm not sure how to do that.
All right, and turn on your camera on your little tray. There's a stop and start video button.
Stop and start. It says hide thumbnail.
Dion, why don't you take the screen while we fiddle with this other stuff?
Okay. You got to unshare yours.
All right.
There you go.
You got it. There you are.
So
all right. So it doesn't matter.
yeah, I don't know if my screen's on or not. Is it something?
It's not revolutionary. Jim, everyone. Jim's going to explain some stuff to us. So let's start with randomly Alberta.
Okay. Yeah.
There you are.
So talk to us. So give us a little background on what's going on here.
Let's see. That one I bought, I think, early this year. And in a pool with you guys, actually, when we bid on that. Mm-hmm. And she's still about anywhere from 90 to 120 days out. She was making 2 payments a month on her catch up, and that fell off pretty quickly. And I got to advance some money for taxes now, but other than that, I mean, she's plugging along. So
she's subperforming.
Subperforming. Yeah, she's on. I'm hopeful she's on the verge of it. Yes.
Okay. So, and this is this boarded at Madison? Is that why the Madison folder's in here? No.
That's yeah, it is. It's bordered with Madison.
Okay. Okay. So let's do this. Oh, too many screens.
Let's open up a statement so we can see what kind of asset we're talking about.
Yeah, I'm opening some stuff, but it's a different screen. Okay. Right. So we've got a accounting history as of 8/6, as of 2 days ago. And so we've got a due date scenario. So she's still running behind. She's due for, looks like she's due for March. What's this? Is that right, Jim? She's running pretty delinquent. Defaulted, actually.
Well, that on the statement she was showing as being, I think 120 last time I.
Yeah, so she's due for March, right? So here we go, right? Loan number, pay to date as of July 3rd. She's due for March 8th, 2017, and we've got her payment came through. So she's beyond delinquent. She's actually in default. You're treating her as a delinquent loan, so that's fine. So the scenario here, right? It's not. The scenario here is to how do you get her caught up? How do you get her to get these couple of payments that she's behind back into place, pass through the servicer, and back into your bank. Have you put in a repayment plan with her? Have you done any sort of repayment?
I did with Daniel Singer initially,
Mm-hmm.
and the plan was she was going to pay two payments per month till she got caught up. She did that for I think 2 months, and then she bounced her check, and then she got all screwed up. So she's been back making 1 month per month, one payment per month.
So she's paying. So she's paying $1,000 a month. You had a plan in place where she was paying $2,000.
No, she was paying 201. So she was paying 410, 411, something like that per month. She was
So
she was down about $1,000, $1,500, something like that.
So it's only her $200. The overdue payment that is coming through on her statement, which is
she's got 4 months, four months right there on the overdue on that one. Is this the August statement?
July.
Okay.
July.
Got it.
So that's a ton of dough. That strikes me as a ton of dough, right? For somebody who needs to pay $200, right?
Yeah.
So who talks to the borrower? You or Madison?
Actually, Madison is. I'm going to turn it over to them. Just let them do all the conversation, because I had Daniel Singer, and then we had that set up, and then he pulled out of it.
So for everybody that doesn't understand who Daniel Singer is it's an attorney firm that does they manage foreclosure, I think some bankruptcy too, right? But so Daniel Singer is it's like an attorney brokerage, if you will.
Yeah, they do loss mitigation. So
yeah. So did they do you think they helped you at all in this scenario?
Well, initially it seemed like it, and then they're going, well, it's not worth paying, they're $50 a month to do this, and we've got it set up, and so they end up said, okay.
Oh, if you're paying them 50 and sometimes only getting the extra 200, you mean?
Yeah, and that made sense, but she didn't follow through on that. So I'm gonna just let Madison handle it, because we've got escrow stuff that needs to get taken care of as well with the taxes and insurance. They sent a letter out to her, but they haven't had a response yet.
See if we can find that. I didn't see your escrow accounting.
So I saw, Jim, that almost all of her payment goes to interest and late fee. So
there's very little principal coming off of this.
Right. So you bought this at a fairly decent discount, right? So
Yeah. It was. I think I paid was it 13.5, somewhere like that.
Okay. Right. I'm gonna just while he's doing that, I'm just gonna put those numbers in the calculator. And what was the payment? 201 and change.
Yeah.
201 and change. 9%. That would tell me, just the handheld calculator tells me that she's got about 200 months to run. That sound ballpark kind of right?
Yeah.
All right. You're paying Madison
$40 a month now.
All right. So you're netting 161.
Yeah.
and you paid 13,500.
Yeah.
So that comes out, the calculator says that's a 12 3/4 yield just on the $200 payment. And she's giving you a little bit more than that. So you're probably closer to a 15 yield right now.
That's probably, yeah, 14, 15.
All right. Oh, and you paid a little bit, you paid some extra $50 a month to Madison
I paid Madison, but I paid Daniel Singer for about, I think I paid him for about 3 months.
Okay. Right. So you had another 150 in cost there, and so anyway. So as a little note, this is all right. It's nothing exciting. But,
No,
but if you've got this $1,000 floating out there, if you can find some magical way to get that in, well, then that's gonna make a number too. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, her overdue payments are probably, are a little bit more of the burden. What I was trying to look for was what the escrow balance is. The only escrow balance that we're getting is $396.64. So when we look at a delinquent borrower like this, right? So one of the I think sometimes this happens with the servicers too. Is when you look at catching the borrower up, the first place you need to start is, can they get them into a place where they're fully funding their taxes and insurance, right?
Yeah.
So and I'm not sure, and Jim, you would be able to tell us, right? So I'm not sure that is her escrow balance really, just shy of $400, or is she?
No, that is the escrow balance that, and I think, yeah. So she didn't pay the taxes. So so they sent me an email that said basically, if you want to advance it, it was one of those. So I got to catch her up on that regard. So that's what I'm saying. I'm gonna have them escrow do all this and work that out, because that was part of our agreement that Daniel Singer worked out. That she was going to do all that, and like I said, it happened about, I think, happened the first month, and I think the second month she bounced her check. So it didn't really. This gal, apparently the husband died, and she's, works for the school district or some story like that. So.
And if $400 is too much of a stretch for her, and that just may be, if she's got a $200 mortgage, she's got to add 100 to at least cover taxes and insurance that are coming. So she probably needs to give you 300 or 350.
Probably, yeah. Yeah. And when I bought it, they had put in a trial loan mod, and so that's where that payment come in. Her payment was higher than that.
Okay.
Find where that was.
But at a net 12% yield, I wouldn't push her to sell the property or foreclose or do that.
No, not really. I just rather get her caught up paying and then go do something else.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the property's worth? Just ballpark.
They had a BPO last year at 20. I think it was 29 to 33. And it's probably worth that.
Okay, so you're into it for 13, far less than 13 now. You're probably into it for 12.
Yeah.
Gotten some money, and so you've got like a 40% or less ITV, investment to value.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is this.
It's not alarming. Like I said, if I'd like to have it performing and not have to worry about it, but
Mm-hmm. Well,
she's not paying down the loan at all. I mean, really, if you look at how much interest she pays every month with the late charge and everything too. So.
Well, and that's the curve, the interest curve with 200 months to go too.
Yeah.
She's probably only 3 years into a 20-year note.
Yeah.
So one of the things, and we saw some of this in some of the MAM assets too, where it can be a little mentally defeating for the borrower to get a statement every month that they can't deal with.
Right.
And so, I'm not a huge fan of the way that the statement reads, right? So, borrowers looking at this saying, holy cow, I need to write $1,000 check.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but the reality is, the borrower just needs to make a $200 payment plus some escrow to maintain speed, if you will, right? So to maintain her account, it's really not as dire as what the statement looks like. And oftentimes it seems like, especially lately with some we've seen it in some of the other troubled accounts over on MAM. But what you don't want is the borrower looking at this going, well, I don't have $1,000, so they don't send in 500, or they don't have $1,000, so they don't send in the 200. And so this overdue payment portion is really, it's a mental burden for them. It's a mental barrier that you got to get them. You want them to understand what's that money going to, and then B as an investor, you want to understand how's that flowing back to you, and do they fully understand what it takes for them to push to the next month. And I think, in this statement, and again, like I said, we see this in some of the other statements that we've seen from a couple of the other servicers, that this can be problematic. This can be its own barrier for the investor. So I would make sure that, from a servicing standpoint, that certainly you want a phone call and a verbal chit chat, right? But it'd be nice to have a repayment plan that goes out in some form of writing or disclosure, so that you understand it as the investor, and the borrower understands it as a borrower, and they understand, hey, this is what I need to pay, because when they hit a hardship, right, they're just going to pay their $200, right?
Yeah.
But we don't see any HOI, and this is Ohio. When's taxes due? Is it biannual? I forget.
They're biannual, yeah.
Yeah. So we need to make sure that she's also on track for paying out, so that you're not having to make advances, and that this number doesn't grow. That would be the first line of attack that I would go after, right? So I think a lot of folks go after the idea of, what is she paying me? I'd rather see her in a position where I'm not having to advance because she's not paying, right? I mean, because because who cares about her payment if you have to advance for her, right? It's only $200.
Yeah.
So if you've got to advance, $2,000 for her taxes, then it's very counterproductive.
Right.
Right. So I'd want to see her with an idea of what she owes monthly, and then B, a plan on top of what she owes monthly that becomes the repayment plan, while she's maintaining her principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, so that you're not having to fork out any extra dough.
So it'd be something that she would have to do with the tax collector, to set up a repayment plan. Encourage her to do that, or is that something through the service?
No, she can do it with Madison, right? So with this $400 sitting in there, right? When is the we'd have to dig through the file, but whenever taxes are due, right? So if it's August and she's got a couple more months, this should escrow up to, this should accumulate to what her taxes are. And then I suspect what's missing here is are you putting lender-placed insurance on her? She doesn't have her own insurance, right?
She had insurance. I haven't seen it. She's supposed to get send it in. They sent the letter out asking for a copy of it, because I think it expired.
So all right, so you're at the stage of Mr. and Mrs. Borrower, you owe me proof of insurance, send that to me. If I don't have proof of insurance, then lender-placed insurance is going to go in place. So here comes your advances, right?
Yeah.
So it's exactly what I'm saying, right? My concern would be that, so now you're going to erode this payment. Is what she's paying into her escrow sufficient to fully fund those liabilities, to fully fund her taxes, and fully fund her insurance? And as we talked about, I think at our over the seminar, one of the things you have to be cognizant of is that not everybody, there's people that are struggling to get insurance nowadays.
Yeah.
So you want to force her to make sure that she can go get it, so that you understand if she can't. And then somebody needs to have that that conversation with them, because when you put lender-placed insurance in place, borrowers typically misunderstand that. They typically think that they've got their own insurance, and that's not insurance for them. That's insurance
that doesn't cover them. No.
Right. So, all right. I don't think there's too much more magic in this, right? I think that's sort of the meat and potatoes of this particular file. Any other comments before I move to the next file? No.
So your point is, when you're pointing about, you got people with $1,000 arrears, you get into this mindset of, am I a borrower, which means I'm paying my loan and I'm making progress, or am I a debtor and I'm embattled and fighting against you? One of the things that irks me with some of my loans is these heavy late fees, and I don't have control over that. And it would seem as I'm offering an olive branch to Mary here, I'd want to say, well, look, you make the payment on time, we won't charge you the late fee. And that while that violates a condition of the contract, and takes $10.06 out of the servicer's mouth, it shows it helps. It's another $10 that can go to taxes.
Yeah.
Right.
And so is there latitude in the small investor to be able to instruct the servicer that we're not going to add late fees?
No.
that was my next question.
No, so that's it's unfortunate. Typically your servicer is going to, the late fees go to your servicer, right? It's the general take on all servicing contracts. But in this scenario, what you want to do is making sure that you're managing what that is, because the point there is those late fees and that payment plan is eroding, even from a psychological standpoint, it's eroding the borrower's desire and capacity to maintain the account.
And that's an interesting perspective. I hadn't really thought of it that way, but you're right. You're looking at trying to make your monthly payment and looking like, oh crap, look at how much I got to pay.
Right.
In the unsecured world, the term for that is payment fatigue.
Yeah.
If I'm in a high interest loan, at some point I just throw up my hands and say, screw it, I'm never going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's somebody has to communicate, somebody has to make an arrangement that gets everybody taken care of. And I would never advocate, an individual investor to try to think they can answer all those questions and stay within the FDCPA and CFPB guidelines without voiding your own loan. And so while I see many people out there are taught to, well, call up the borrower, work out a loan mod, and you're creating a new contract, and you're not licensed to be a mortgage originator. So.
Right. And so, I guess we're sticking with it, right? So we've got we pulled out the title report from the loan purchase, and we've generally we're looking at about $1,000, right? Mm-hmm. So this is just her tax liability is half of her P&I annually.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so if we just think about that, right? So she's paying $200, but she's only paying, whatever, $2,200 a year, $2,400 a year, right? But we need this other 1,000 to come from her. And so again, the way that I would structure a repayment plan with her is I would set these liabilities first to get funded. Then I would put her into a scenario where her ongoing payments are funding her P&I, because get her to a place where, especially in this scenario where you're controlling the escrow, it's not necessarily controlling, but she's paying into her escrow, and that's fully funding her property tax and her homeowner's insurance. And then you're not putting out any other money, because who cares about the $2,400 you're getting if you've got half of it goes to taxes and the other half of it's going to homeowner's insurance, right?
Exactly.
You're net zero. Who cares?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I think that's beating.
So and I'm going to go through the servicer and do this. It's kind of what my plan is. I haven't talked with this borrower.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not. Steve is a very aggressive collector.
Mm-hmm.
He likes to call the borrowers and talk with them and make friends. I don't like to do that. It's not my style. I typically go back to the servicer and say, "This is a phone call you need to make. This is the plan we need to see and put in place," and give guidance, and then have them respond with, some level of this is the way they're going to do it, or yada yada yada.
Okay. Yeah.
So but I think I would go back to Madison and say, look, again, here's the deal. Run me so your servicer is required by law to do an escrow analysis, once a year, right? So there should be one. You probably just have to ask them for it. Probably comes from a different department, and that escrow analysis is going to show what the aggregate, payments will do as they go into her account, and what you'll have to do depending on when the liability comes up. So it's August. So if payments are due in November, you're not going to have enough money accumulated in the account to make to pay from escrow. So she's got to fork up dollars to catch up to that idea first.
Yeah.
Right. So just in theory, say she's $500 down. Well, so she's looking at this account statement going, I'm $1,000 down. But really, if you don't manage how this is allocated, if you don't manage how her money comes in and gets associated to her escrow account and her borrower account, and then that flows through to you, this is going to be a perpetual never catch up.
Yeah.
That's what this will be, right?
Yeah.
And the ongoing liability, just again for everybody at home, the ongoing liability is $200 a month, right? So you'd like to think that's very manageable, right? It's $200.
You would, yeah.
Right. So that's why I think I would dig into get her in a safe spot with taxes and insurance. Make sure that when that next bill comes due, or if she doesn't have homeowner's insurance, which is probably, it smells like there's no homeowner's insurance. I'd force her to go get that. Give her a little peace of mind relief kind of idea that you're not, going to drop the world on her head. Get that set up, and then start hammering out, catching her up for her P&I arrears.
And there's a significant difference between lender placed insurance and homeowner purchased insurance that I don't know that this ever really gets explained to the borrower. When I insure a property, I don't insure the property, I insure my loan. Right. So in this case, Jim's paid $13,000 for this loan. I'm either gonna insure $13,000, or the max I'm going to insure is the $24,000. And if the home's got equity above that, the house burns down, Mary loses, and she's been charged significantly more, I would expect, than if she purchased from her local State Farm agent.
Right.
I mean, this should be probably a $30 a month policy. So if she's got $30 out of pocket to go to State Farm, she's got 100 at least a month she needs to be escrowing to cover current liability. Then that brings you up to back to that 400 number where she's got to pay you an extra $100 a month to take care of last year's that you have to pay to keep the property.
Right.
But she's failed at the 400, so then nobody knows why, right? Because there aren't collector notes to look at. There isn't a dialogue that goes on. It went to Singer outsourced it. Somebody put her into a payment arrangement. She said okay, and then she failed, and now so here we are. So it's back to somebody has to communicate as a human being with Mary, not send statements that look like this.
Right. Right.
So.
Okay. Let's move the world on. So the next one I was popping open is Clifford. So give us a little background here. Clifford. Yep, go ahead.
I bought that one a year and a half ago or so. I bought two of them for their tail end of they're closing out a fund, and got a referral from Scott Carson, actually. Anyway, so I bought them both. I ended up selling one of them pretty close after I bought it. I sold it on FCI. The gal was that gal was like a serial bankruptcy filer, and kind of made me nervous. I got rid of that one. Anyway, this other guy, this was a late stage foreclosure, and tried to work with him, get him back on track, but it wasn't happening. It was too close, and they'd already spent all the money on most of the money on the foreclosure. So I just took it over, and I had to put another $1,200 in there to do that. And then I still had about $10,000 in unpaid taxes that had to be taken care of. So that one I boarded with Landome, and they were doing some. Actually, no, that was with the other guy. They were doing some lost net. Anyway, at any rate, it's an REO now. I got it back, and I've been renting it out for $600 a month.
So one of these was the BPO. Here's one. So there's nothing. Again, no real magic here to any of this, right? So you move through default disposition. You took possession of the real property. Now it's your REO, and you're renting it out. Are you seeing this market rent? Are you seeing somewhere in the $600-700? What's the rent look like?
I think that's optimistic. There, I was getting 600, and that's what I get now. It's a 2-bedroom, 1 bath. So
this was a little high.
Yeah, I think it is high.
And this was I thought I saw a date on here. Yeah. So this was November 2016 when you had this evaluation. This evaluation came over a little aggressive. So, it sort of is what it is. You've got yourself a little rental, and you've got a tenant in there, and you just whatever you're going to do with the rental, you do with the rental, right? Now it's real property. The asset's different, and
it is.
You've got some management on it.
And it's probably there's sales in there that, it's been fixed up as well. I had a guy in there doing work during this time, so it's probably 25 to 30. Well, there's some sales that are in there in 35 range up to 40, but I think they're pretty fixed up.
What do you think your basis is? What do you think you're all into this at this point?
I'm into this one. I'm into it about 18,000. So I was not. It looked really good at first, but then I made the mistake of see, I understood that when I boarded, I just thought, well, if sheriff's sale, I'm done with that. And Madison's been billing me $200 a month, so I finally got that off their books. That is their minimum, by the way.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Let's detail that again.
I'm sorry, it wasn't Madison, it was Land Home.
Okay, so it's at Land Home.
It was at Land Home. I finally closed the file out. It just so I got wasted some money on servicing costs. I had a couple deals going in the meantime that I was going to sell it subject to the sheriff's deed and let somebody else pay the 10 grand, and those fell away. So I ended up having to come up with the money myself. So.
Okay. So is your position including the 10K that you spent, or would I have to add that on to the basis?
No, that's it. That's included. I'm all in.
So you paying a property manager there?
I pay him. Yeah, I pay him 10%. So I'm coming up with $540.
You get $540 a month.
Yep.
You're 18,000 in, but then you've got taxes that you're covering out of that.
Yes.
So your taxes are 50 a month?
Probably
100 a month?
100 a month with taxes, insurance.
Okay. So maybe let's just use, I'm just playing with the calculator again. So maybe you net 400 with a little bit of reserve.
Yep.
On an 18,000 acquisition. And, if you held that for 20 years, that's 27%. You held it for 10. Yeah. So it's, it's a 20+% yield for the work. Oh, look, he's doing an IRR table. Yay. Yeah, but he doesn't get the 540, right? He's got costs coming out of pocket, so his net's probably 400 a month.
400, yeah.
So we got 540, and then the other 140 here is taxes, insurance.
Yeah.
Right.
And a little tiny bit for reserve for vacancy or repairs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So generally,
should probably use a 300 number to be brutally safe, right?
Yeah, I guess the point here was just to kind of show some of the way to calculate that. So you've got well, let's do it this way. Yeah. So you got 4,800. Let's make this look pretty.
Yeah, just do an IRR on that column,
Well, you can't. So for those at home trying to do Excel math, you can't do an IRR. This is going to be a negative IRR because this doesn't sum to
more than
to enough to cover it. Jim, what do you think the property is worth, real quick?
I think it's probably realistically 30,000.
30,000, right?
Yeah.
So if we say it's 30,000, you could figure out your annual IRR if you say, all right, well, if it's 30,000 and you sold it and you got 10 cents net, right? So you collect 90% of that. If you take your 27, you put it back in, you could figure out what you're tracking, right? This will give you an IRR. Now, that's what you'd be tracking on an annual basis.
Okay.
Not revolutionary. Not. Yeah, that's not great, right? That's you didn't sound as exciting as the viewers.
Well, I'm not as excited when I look at that number. Of course not. No.
Yeah.
So right, and just sort of for again the math thing here, right? So if we look at 400 times 12, right? So we're grossing 4,800. And if we take the 4,800 into where you're at, so this is going to be your, sort of your kind of your cash on cash return. You're pushing them, you're pushing what looks like a little a decent deal, right? So there's negative because the 18 is negative there. That's why it's like that. But and this return here is still, this is a periodic return, right?
Okay.
So if you really wanted to do this and you said, hey, if you wanted to set this up, you know, I normally set these up like exactly like this. So if I said, hey, I'm going to hold this out for a longer period of time, then you just run your months out. But while this is a 12 period asset, right? You have to run this back out to 12 too, right?
Right.
Because that's actually that's a per period return, because this is a period return. So I can run it on an annual basis. I can say 5 years, right? And I still have my 18,000. And so let me just format this because that's the way I like to look at it. And then we take
4,800
cash flow, right? So we have 4,800, and then let's just say you hold it for 5 years, and now we're going to add back in your net sale, right? Boom.
Okay.
So now this would be an IRR on an annual basis, so you wouldn't have to do any math. So on an annual basis, that's not bad, right?
That makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, so the point there was is when you know, everybody looked at this and they had a heart attack. That's not what I was trying to format. When they looked at this and they were having a heart attack because that was a low number. This is because this is per period. Now this is annual. So over 5 years, you're trapping pretty well. Well, obviously, what's missing here is, as Steve was pointing out, is you don't have some of the capital expenses that you more than likely, you know, have to shove back into the property, right? So, so some of this might erode a little more,
right?
or this, or this
here.
27,000 isn't as big of a number.
Right.
Two different ways you can kind of look at that, right? So maybe you go to market and sell for 25 instead of capitalizing those returns. So you know, not a bad day. Not a bad day. You're doing pretty well. You know, you couldn't be scared of that, but the upcoming, or the, you know, the forecasted liability there on real property, as we all know, right? You have, you know, tenants and toilets now, is something that you have to be concerned about. And how much dollars are you going to have to spend to take that property to market to realize this 27,000?
So
and that's obviously the meat and potatoes.
So
of
Dion,
returners.
Dion, my mitigation to that is after a year of payments, I want to sell the house to the borrower, to the renter, and turn that into a note, so it puts all that liability on him.
Yeah, and certainly that is a way to do that, right? Some sort of installment contract, land contract, contract for deed kind of idea. All, you know, all copacetic. You know, when you go underwrite this guy, since we're doing some Excel math, so if we go underwrite this guy and we really want to make sure that he has, you know, some decent capacity to perform, I'm looking for this guy to have an income, a monthly income of 1142 or better, right? So that would be a 35% debt to income ratio, right? In general. But the only bad part about that quick and easy math is this 400 doesn't include tax and insurance liability.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, because you're setting it up as the net on there.
Well, but it's net. He's paying $600 a month now.
Right.
I turn to him and say, hey, for $4.25, you can own this house outright, and the taxes and insurance are on you. That's my pitch.
Yeah.
So there's his monthly income for 600.
Mm-hmm. So in order for him to support this house, he needs to make $1,800 a month.
Yeah. Which isn't, yeah, it's not bad.
Well, in Cleveland, it's a middle class life, right?
Most of the people that, you know, they got to have that kind of income to rent the house. I won't rent to somebody who doesn't have at least 3 times the rent.
Well, and so you rented to this person. Do you have a vague memory of what that number was on the way in? What he did? What, you know, did he make $2,000 a month?
No, I got property manager put him in there, but that's my kind of my baseline.
Mhm.
And I'm pretty much, most everybody I've been seeing is, most of them make a couple grand a month there. Otherwise, they don't get to get past the application stage.
Well, and this is this leads me into, this is two properties we looked at that are Ohio. Why Ohio? And this isn't entirely what you do. You've got other rentals there, right?
I do have other rentals. I got those because I've been doing buy and holds there for about 10 years in Summit County. That's kind of that's why I landed there, I guess. But so I'm familiar with rental rates and kind of what's going on there. So I'm trying to scale that back because I'm tired of getting the calls,
Right.
or managing the managers.
So you think this market will provide you with borrowers that make 20,000 and change that can afford a $400 mortgage?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, okay. All right. So at some point you run the same kind of table, and maybe your exit is, Dion, you season a mortgage, you do it all straight the way it's supposed to be with a mortgage loan originator with good documentation, and maybe you get out for 95% of note value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'd be attractive. I didn't really want to own more property. I'm trying to scale back on that, but like I said, it was a late stage foreclosure, and I only paid $2,500 for the note, and
because it had that big tax bill.
it had a big tax bill, and they had already spent $5,500 on foreclosure cost.
Mm-hmm.
So I picked up another 1,000 or so to finish it out. Yeah, and that I came with a big tax bill too. So.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so I was trying to pull up the other one. I think the other one's the Trumbull. Is that the right folder?
That's
Jim?
Trumbull County, yeah. You know what I did? I think I saved that one file out of that.
Because there's a lot of conveyance going on in that folder. So is that to give us a little
that one
background
originated?
Catch up.
It originated as a harbor portfolio contract for deed.
Okay.
It changed hands. I bought it. Jasmine, she got it from somebody who got it from harbor portfolio. All those conveyances in there I was trying to get them to do the deeds properly because they weren't doing it. So that's why that file had so many in there. Let me pull it up. So that guy it's actually under the Williamsburg in Dropbox. I broke that one out separately from the other one. That was.
Okay. So is that the same asset or no? That's two different assets?
That's the same asset. I didn't know how to fix that, so I just broke that out separately. I moved that one that I sent you first. I moved that out and I put just sent you the Williamsburg. So we basically bought the contract for deed. He hadn't paid for about, I think he was down about 2 years off the top of my head there.
So you bought into it. He was in default.
He was in default. Yes.
And where does the asset sit now? Is there still a vendee in there, or is it tenant borrower?
Yeah, and basically I started with Polaris. I worked with them for 3-4 months, and the guy got a bad attitude, said no, call me anymore. So then I turned it over to Daniel Singer, and he filed a notice of default and the forfeiture and all that stuff, and went to court. And basically in court, we won. We got a writ, and we made a deal with the guy that he has to pay. The judge only said he would allow the writ to go for 6 months, so he had to pay on time for 6 months. My original deal was I was offering them a $2,000 down payment. I was going to forgive $2,000 of the arrearages, and he didn't want to do that because he thought he had a forbearance with Harbor Portfolio, but he had never followed through on it and was not signed. He never did it, basically. And that was not in anything that I got from them. It was something that he showed me.
So, so we popped open the contract here, right? So he bought it for $27,900, and he was supposed to be paying $1,200 a month, right?
He was supposed to be paying, I think, $430 a month.
Oh, this is his down payment.
So the bottom line is he made a payment during the court proceedings for $2,700,
mm-hmm.
And then but we went through with the court proceedings, and that actually, the agreement was made. That ended up going into paying legal fees. So my offer of forgiving some of the arrearages was off the table at that point. So he should have took my first offer, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically, what we did is if he makes these payments for 6 months, then we're putting the arrearages on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
He'll be back in there, paying monthly.
So you've got some semblance of a repayment plan that's kicking in. Is his ongoing liability? So it looked like his payment there was $300 a month, generically.
So 300 plus 130 for taxes.
So he's 430 all day. That keeps him current. That's and then a repayment plan on top of that.
Well, that is the repayment plan.
So just for the record, there's erosion on the original file, then, if you will, right? Because if he was paying $300, $3,600, right, that should have been passing to you, and I just moved it. So he's still paying that amount, but the problem stands now that is not advancing his amortization. It's ending up being an arrearage, right? So he's 308. He was 308 moving forward. So technically, where he's paying less than 308. So if he's paying 300, and that's not advancing him, it's playing catch up. Then there's a portion of that 300 that's being allocated to the arrears, which means his real note rate right now, his real payment rate isn't 10%. Right?
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Just understand that math?
I do.
Yeah, because he's only paying 300, and it's not all making it go from August.
It doesn't go to the original amount. You're right. We've turned around and put this stuff on the back end. So yeah, that's going to lower that.
Right. So again, there's no magic there. I think this happens when you get into these lower level files and start dealing with these payment plans. Is that that these things get set up and you're trying to fit everything into this box, because this is from an underwriting standpoint, here's the box, right? As this box was, hey, I can afford to pay $300. And this is one of the liabilities that you have with contract for deeds is there's no escrow demand in this note. Right. We're staring at the note. There's $300. You've got another $130 that you need to make sure this guy's paying to make sure that taxes and insurance are maintained. And so there's no escrow demand in this. So you don't really have control. Really isn't the right word, but I'll use the word control. You don't have control or notice that nothing's being funded into escrow. And if nothing's being funded into escrow, then you don't have notice that those liabilities are being paid, and those can obviously start to erode your return. And it's some of that is exactly what happened, right? And this
Yeah.
so what we're looking at is, from that idea is when we look at these types of notes, these are the structural things that I would be concerned about, right? So great, fantastic. You have a 10% late fee. Who gives a rat's hiney? What I'm more concerned about is, what is this pay? How does this payment work out for the borrower? And am I going to be in a position to have to advance because the borrower has, a shortfall? And that's exactly what's happening here, right? So
Right.
so you've had to make some advances. You've had to maintain, the liabilities that for in this type of instrument, if the world goes right, you'd normally not have to maintain. And so when you set these up, right, we won't deal with whatever this was, but when you go to set these up, or you go to treat these, I think the takeaway here, now that we've had two real files that have cash flowing issues, that the takeaway here is, when I go look at these files, I want to see that the tax and insurance liability is the first and foremost to be dealt with, which for some reason is a little counterintuitive to the collection side of the world, because I think a lot of investors are like, well, where's my P&I? And I would say, hey, who cares about this $3,600 if you're going to advance $2,600 to pay the bills for the guy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So from a strategic standpoint, from a mental standpoint, I want to get that set up. I want to get that out of the way. You move the things out of the way that are going to cost you money as an investor, that you're going to have to advance on. And then when then you have a level playing field. Now you can figure out how much of this 300 am I going to be able to collect? How much of that's going to be allocated to, arrears for the guy, and how much of that is going to be donated to, advancing his amortization. And when looking at that, all of that stuff, that would also be how I would make decisions on whether or not I'm going to mod something, reinstate something, or et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I don't have any other magic for this. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you get one of these, and I own one of these too, and you do a new repayment plan or a new loan agreement, you make sure that you put taxes and insurance as first monies paid, and you make sure that you're setting an escrow amount inclusive of that.
Yeah, I think what happens, well, what tends to happen in sub and reperformers, or the non-performers that get reinstated, is that they get sold on this idea of what the borrower is going to be paying, right? So P&I,
Sure.
and that's not a true pass-through. And so I think oftentimes the analysis is fudged because of that, because it's not the true pass-through. The true pass-through is going to be the net funds that you get at the end of the year as an investor. And the way that you're going to manage that from a cash flow perspective is you make sure that the other contingent liabilities that you're going to have are not coming out of your pocket, right? And look, I think too, from a we don't talk enough about the psychology of how to get a debtor to be better at their role, but there's probably something in the idea that, hey, look, they're fully funding their escrow. It's their insurance now. It's their property taxes. They're paying for it. They're not living off of what the investor's advancing.
Well, and you use the word debtor, and that's important, because they're not a homeowner; they're a debtor.
Yeah, and I think that mental, that mental success is good for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these people haven't seen equity or the light of day for the last 10 years.
That's right.
And if you can be the investor that gives that to them, and it doesn't have to be this, this isn't save the borrower, save the world. This is maybe we call this just good good collection practices, whatever. Steve would be the one that could probably label it the best.
Right. Well, yeah, and it's we versus us versus them.
Right.
Really looking for it. Open up the picture, would you? There's a photo there. Down a little bit. I'm assuming this is going to be the house.
Or not.
All right, or not. All right. So it was originally a $27,000 note from Harbor. The one that I bought, again, it's my first note that I bought, had been sold and foreclosed 3 times in rapid succession.
Wow.
So they had bought a note. Harbor had a loan. They put a borrower in there for 60. He defaulted. They put a borrower in there for 40,000. He defaulted. They put another borrower in there for 40,000, and that was the loan that I bought. And so the property didn't match up at all to a $40,000 sale price. And so I'm wondering. So you paid. What'd you pay for this?
$10,500.
So you paid $10,000, and you bought $27,000 in unpaid principal.
Correct.
With a big whack of arrears, so probably a $40,000 number. Yeah.
He had he was about 6,000 or 7,000, I think, in arrears.
Okay. All right. So I've got a $35,000 number that I'm looking at, and I get all excited that I get to buy it for 13, right? And it's like, ooh, what do I got here? And the first thing I found out is that I had a couple $1,000s in back property taxes I need to get covered to keep the darn thing. Right?
Yeah.
Right. And so you've got him. So you're into this for 13 purchase. You've got singer fees. You've got all sorts of other stuff, and plus time. And you're selling the house back to the same borrower who didn't make payments for 2 years. And he couldn't pay his $300. So what's the magic that makes us think that this is going to be okay? Because I've got one of these that I'm living with.
Well, he couldn't rent anywhere for rents at 600, 700 for how he's got 5. I think he's got 5 or 6 kids. So he's kind of stuck, and I think he had some issues with Harbor, and I think he just kind of got a bad attitude.
Yeah.
And I inherited that when I came in, which is interesting because a lot of these things I've seen with them. Well, like I said, you had one that had been foreclosed on 3 times. That was kind of their MO. I probably wouldn't buy another one of those that they had originated. But he was not going to move. He was going to fight it. It was his house, and that's why we went through the court stuff and basically worked that out. So we'll see.
So he's in agreement to pay back to a $300 monthly payment.
He's paying $430.
$430. So that includes $130 towards taxes and insurance.
Right.
Okay.
We bought it for $10,500.
Okay, $10,500.
With the legal fees, the money that he paid to make a payment, that went into the reserve, and a part of the deal was I'd end up paying legal fees and stuff like that. So that didn't get credited on any of his payments or the principal.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so he paid the cost of you chasing him to get him to pay the bill.
Yeah, he did. Well, Daniel had to fly to Cleveland to go to court because the judge required somebody from the lender to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So, you want to open up a spreadsheet?
And so he has a job now, a better job or something like that. And whatever the story was, and I think he didn't have a very good job, or he lost a job, and then he got into a fight with Harbor, probably over the condition of the property they sold him.
Right, right, and yeah, and the things that I saw in a couple of harbor loans that I've looked in is that that there's no there's no give and take. It's you got to pay to stay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the way the world should be. But at this end of the economic spectrum, that's not always possible. So you got a guy like you said with five kids and minimum wage income trying to hang on to a home, but you're now, if you were to rent this, you'd think you'd rent it for the 600 a month.
I think it would go for about 600. Yeah. That's,
All right. So at least you have that in your back pocket.
yeah. I don't, once again, I don't want more property.
Yeah, that's right. So
Same deal.
Dion, let's try to figure out the best financial hold or exit for this. Now that we're into it, what do we do with it? You opening something? What are you doing? Here we go. So Jim, you didn't rewrite a new CFD with this. You have a court order that says.
I did not. We have the same one.
Okay. So you can assume his principle is the same as when he started, likely.
I pulled up the most recent statement that's in there. Let me see what it's got. Yeah, they haven't changed it out to the back end yet. It says he still owes $7,800. Once again, it's like Dion said, be pretty demoralizing to look at that.
Or you take the perspective that, look, I'm getting over. Yeah, and again, that's that us and them thing. And this is not a common thing, but it happens a lot in these parts of the world where folks, paying their mortgage isn't the prideful thing to do. It's getting over that's the game, because you're living in survival.
Yeah.
So it's a different borrower perspective than we think of, this American dream. Make your 360 payments and you own your home outright.
Right.
Yeah. This is all about this for them. It's all about cash flow.
Yeah. Where did I put it?
So you get to keep him because you've given him a better deal than finding another place that'll have another 3-bedroom place to house his 6 or 7 people living in the place now.
Yeah, that's
Would you say did you say if it was a 2-bed or a 3-bed?
It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath.
Okay. We should have music playing while Dion's working. Maybe when we get a little more sophisticated. What are you doing back there, Dion?
I'm sitting here talking. Sorry about that. So I'm sitting here talking. Apparently, apparently it was muted.
We several minutes of silence. So
I've been sitting here going, why is no one answering my questions? All right, so that makes a lot more sense. Jim, what was the general cost basis here?
10.5.
10.5. All right. So
that was your original cost basis, but now you've got a bunch of expenses and fees, and well, but that's your first year, right? Your first year was 10.5, or your first period, and then you have additional that you've added before. Sets. There we go.
So we really have. Get over here. Get over here. So all we were doing here is we're saying, okay, so this is going to mature 2026. It's really 9 years away. So I've got 10. So we'll just take off 1.
Well, we've added some. They threw the arrears in the back end, right?
Yeah, but so good. That's a great question, Steve. Maturity is still the same. So the maturity here is still what is this, March? September. So this is still September 2026. Oops. 2026, right? So it's still that's still the maximum amount of money that the guy's going to pay. This is the plan as it sits in the note, if we will, right? So his gross sum is going to be 32, right? So from an ROI standpoint, not a bad deal. Right, you've got a cash on cash return of whatever 309%. So we'll do the per period IRR for those of you that like to use Excel, like Dion, and not a calculator. So here's our this is 3% per period. We still need to do this annual. So we'd actually take that into here. So that's what it looked like on paper, right? Come on.
Times 12.
Yeah, sorry. Jim, you just dropped the payoff. So from an original analysis, this is what this looked like, right? And one of the key things here, I guess I would point out, is he's still making this 300. So some of this cash flow is still true and proper, but it's passing through to the investor as a portion of this is now paying for his arrears, right? So what we're going to end up with is a bigger balloon down here. He's not going to have paid the balance, right? So because we had a 10% rate. Let's just do 10 years for a little bit faster, easier math for everybody, right? So in the 10 years, if he was to pay, he was going to pay 22,701. That would have been the balance. Generically, that should have been the balance when this was picked up, right? Do you have, I know you dropped it in here. I just saw it. Papa.
I got a, did you see it?
There it is. I got it.
Okay.
Whew. Again, we're back to the, the disparaging monthly statement.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Right?
Yeah.
And that's also being banged with a $30 late fee every month.
Right. It's and you wonder why, we wonder why people redefault, right? Because you look at that every month and going, geez, I'm never going to get out of this hole. So he owes 25,608. Ooh, we're behind. So can I do this? All right. So we got side by side here. So this was the PV. He should have been somewhere closer to 22. So he was behind when you bought him.
Yeah, he was 2 years past due.
Yeah, so he was right. So that was so for everybody that was just kind of following along, that deduction was the present value at 10% over 10 or over 10 years at 10%, right? So we that gives us what should have been the principal, the unpaid principal balance at the time that the loan was acquired. So he's even further around. So technically, again, there's 9 years, right? So it's really 108 instead of the 120 here. This is gonna be a little bit worse, right? So he was significantly behind. He is $4,000 or $5,000 behind when you pick this up because he owes 25,608, right? 25,608 and 39. So he is he's it doesn't look like this. So generically that looks like it was going to balloon to begin with. Just for math, let me pull this over here for everybody to watch. Right. So we started March 1st, 2013. We ended September 2026. So that was a 13-year note.
13 and a half years. Yeah.
Yeah.
160 months or something.
Yeah, right. Just a weird number. Oops. $156. So what we should have, if this works out right, what did I say, 156? 308, something like that.
308, yeah.
So I hear you typing, but I don't see anything on the screen.
Can you not see the screen I have right here?
Really? I can see the screen.
Well, I can see the one cell, but there's nothing, anything else.
No? You see this? You see that, Jim?
No, I don't have anything. It says Excel worksheet 3 on top. That's all I'm seeing.
There's nothing in the.
You should see. Yeah, I see all of his typing in the spreadsheet.
I don't see any of it. Nothing's coming up in mine.
Let's see what I have. Looking on my bottom of my toolbar. I have mute, stop, share screen. You press the share screen button or something, or what do you want to do, Dion? You want to quickly unshare and share again?
Do you see that?
You see him just draw a circle on the screen?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Do
What do you see?
Tell me how I'm doing.
All right. So I can't see what you're doing, Jim. So I can't turn you on or off.
I just reshared it. Does that
You
work?
reshared it. Okay.
I'm still not seeing anything.
Strange.
All right, I'm going to pause the recording for a second while we look at this. Okay. All right. We think we fixed our technical difficulty. Now Dion's going to share the screen again.
See it? See the Excel workbook with numbers on it?
I do.
I don't.
You don't?
No.
All right. We think we fixed it.
Are we live?
Yep, you're live.
Hi, welcome back. So we were doing some calcs on Jim's loan. So this was current present value. This was life of loan present value. And I've got the note, which we were looking at, right? So the note here, 26,700. So technically, actually, there's a little flub of that, but that might be because I rounded the periods 156, so it's probably a little bit
you
more.
were off a couple periods.
Yeah. So the present value of the math was, or I'm sorry, the present value of the note was correct. So where we sort of ended, or what we bumped into there, was the idea that there's only about 108 periods left on the loan, and that means he's only going to pay to about 21,308. And hold on a second here. Got the statement. There it is. So he owes 25,608, right? So that's where we got the UPB over here. And so there's some of this catch up now, right? So we're looking at, he's going to pay the $300, leaving the escrow out because the escrow isn't passing through to you. But the 25,608 is really what we stand to collect. But the issue there is, right, the repayment plan that we have. I don't need this. The repayment plan that we have doesn't give us an idea of really what's going to be happening here. So what we would need to see, just for the sake of like due diligence and stuff, right? What we need to see is the accounting history. That's how this 308 is being allocated to the borrower's account, because the issue that we discovered when we first started talking about the loan was, while he pays this $300.08, we don't know how much of this is actually paying towards the balance and how much of this is paying towards the arrears. So this is one of those things too, where we've bumped into this on some of the MAM loans. It's not uncommon, right? Where you kind of got to go back to your servicer and be like, hey, look, we need to maintain the integrity of the note and have a repayment plan for the arrears separately. So our statement insinuates that he's got 2747.10 that he needs to be paying back, right? Actually, more than that. Yeah. So his principal allocation's at 8668, and his interest is at 2113. But this isn't fully passing through to you like this, right, Jim?
Right.
So in other words, so he's paying his $308 here, or it's $300, whatever. He's paying his $300, but this is not, when this payment comes in, this 300, he's actually short. So he needs to make almost 2 payments to advance 1 month. Right? Does everybody understand the way that that's happening, right? Because he's paying his 300. A portion of that 300 is paying the arrears, so he won't advance. So you're actually creating a balloon event at the end of this loan.
Yeah, I see that.
Right?
Yeah.
Not exciting. You'd much rather have this 308 passing through and not creating that balloon. From an investor standpoint, your cash flow is still the same because he's still paying the 300. He's just fallen behind. So I would, as we learned in the other loans too, right? We've got a functional escrow. He's got a $130 escrow that he's paying into. So he should, in theory, we should be on top of his taxes and insurance. But what we don't have is a good repayment plan for this asset, which should include, here's the 300, so that when he makes this $300 payment, he goes from 9 to 10, and that he's making some dent on the total arrears. We don't have a good total arrearage here. We've got 740, 74, 43, 21. What I say we have? 108, yeah. 74, what was this number?
So Jim, the judge's order or the compromise that was reached in court was a trial period of 6 monthly payments?
It was, we have a writ of restitution that's good for 6 months, and that's based on him making the payment on time every month. If he doesn't make it, then we can file the writ and do the eviction.
Okay. What happens after that? So the judge gave him a 6-month grace period to...
Essentially, the judge said he didn't want to take over servicing the loan, that basically he let it go 6 months, and after that, then I have to refile and do it again.
So after 6, so if he makes 6 payments...
If he doesn't make the payment anytime during the 6 months, we can file the writ of restitution.
But if he does...
After 6 months, we'd have to refile the default and do the whole thing again.
Okay. So if I'm him and I've already learned that I can live in my house for 2+ years without making a mortgage payment, making 6 payments and then starting it again is a pretty good cash flow deal.
It may well be. I'm a little concerned about that kind of a settlement, but if that's what I got to do, I'm going to do it again, but I won't go for a settlement.
What were your costs for doing that?
We've paid about $2,200.
Okay,
and actually that's where that $2,700 that's in reserve, that's going towards that.
All right, so there was so the borrower made a $2,700 payment that all goes to the legal costs, so you're whole for that.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's into it. So that's a fairly decent commitment on his part. That's 10% of what he owes.
Yeah. I thought it was. That's kind of why I went well. Yeah,
that improves my point of view. I mean, that's, for a guy with a $300 mortgage payment, ponying up $2,700 is a big deal.
Yeah.
So, but to Dion's point is, you got to start seeing, at the end of that 6 months, were there instructions, or do you come back to him and say, you got to start giving me an extra $100 a month to get this $7,500 arrears taken care of?
No, there was nothing in that regard. The judge just said basically that was what they settled, and that his comment was that you're going to have to start the eviction over again after the 6 months is over, if this happens again.
Okay. Well, you didn't go to the hearing. Singer did, right?
Daniel Singer went there. He's wanted to cut the deal. Okay.
But knowing
I think the biggest thing, though, is you're right, that we probably need to address the fact that this isn't going to amortize his loan, and
if you look to him to whatever additional he pays benefits both of you, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah, because right now, Dion, he's going to come out at the end of 12 years, still owing 7,000 plus interest on the house, right?
Yeah. So he's $70, $68. You know, it would take him $68 a month on top to repay the 74.43. Your 27 is sitting there in an unapplied account. But what we don't have without the servicers accounting is how that gets allocated. So it's 2,700 sitting there, but that 27 won't truly be. So you know, the math here was, you know, does this actually apply all to unpaid balance? And the answer to that would be no, it doesn't, because there's going to be a portion of this that's going to go directly to your legal fees and advances, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So this erodes right here. This erodes a lot of that 2,700. It's not gonna apply to his unpaid principal balance. So in a perfect world, if it did, he'd still be shy, whatever this is, $1,000. He'd still have this disparity of $1,000. In other words, if you took that and you applied it to all of his principal, he'd still have a balloon event. It's even worse than this because that 2,700 isn't going to all apply. So he's going to be several $1,000s behind. So one of the things that I would, again, look to is, Mr. Borrower, you've got a requirement to pay your 308 plus your $130. That's the call on the note, right? So that's what he needs to be paying moving forward to handle the arrears, and to catch up. He's got to have, you've got to have a plan for this $7,400. So nobody, in worst case scenario, you have to take it to term, right? If you can get this, cut down to say 5 years, there's an extra $120, right? It's nice that he just paid $2,700. So maybe one of the conversations is figuring out how much he can chunk off that 74.43. But that, you're going to have some borrower conversations with him. And then that's the repayment plan I would start to set up, is get him back, get the note. Again, I this sort of speaks to the same idea that we were talking about with escrows, is get the note and the escrow, get the ongoing structure of the borrower's liability back intact. Then put a repayment plan on top of that, not diminish it, but put it on top. He's going to have to pay extra. That's the only way he ever gets.
And there's that little other field to do just that. Would that be where that would go? Bill him for that on a monthly basis?
Yeah. So it's almost like, you're forbearing that $7,400, right? And then, so then, look, if he can pay that in, a couple of years, if you can pay it in one chunk, whatever that is, to treat this separate, and then you're going to have the guy's going to get a much better looking statement, right? So he's not going to hate life every time he opens his mail.
Yeah.
That, because this is that's a horrible thing to look at. You bought a $25,000 house, and a quarter of it you owe right now.
Yeah.
But and the irony, right? The irony is, it looks like he's current.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So his due date's for 9/1.
Right.
It's screwy servicing, and I'm not sure.
I know. I looked at that when I pulled it up, and I was like, my understanding was they were going to add that to the principal on the back end, and he was going to be looking like he's current. But
and I would,
at this point,
I would not advocate adding anything to the back end ever.
Okay.
Yeah, you want it's you gotta pay something. Like you said, you thought the neighborhood was $600 a month,
Right.
and he's $430 now. So, that tells me that 125, like Dion has there, is still a better deal than him going out and finding another place.
Right.
So, so maybe that's it. Maybe that 600 number is possible.
Yeah, well, you've got room, right? It doesn't have to be the full 124.
Yeah, but putting it on the back end, you wouldn't buy something that's due in 12 years.
It's the wrong Band-Aid, right?
It's exactly the wrong Band-Aid. You're right. Yeah.
You're kicking. That's the proverbial kick the can down the road.
Yeah,
right?
I get that. Yeah.
Right. Because your actual basis here is different, right? So you bought in for 10.5, but you've made advances. So this number is actually bigger, and it's because this is the remaining term of your loan. We could up this basis. I think you were closer to another 2,500 or 3,000 here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So you're eroding, as again, it's the same thing. You're eroding your return. You're eroding your return because while he's paying, you're still making advances that aren't good. But the nice part about this is this borrower, as opposed to like the other guy, you've got an escrow, so taxes, insurance are being paid. So it's really just peel this. I peel this $7,400 off and figure out what's it going to take for that, because to Steve's point, he's saying he wouldn't put it back into the unpaid balance, right? So what that does, there's two different ideas there. If you put the 7,400 into the balance, he's going to have a different payment because you're going to change the unpaid principal balance and you're going to re-amortize it. In reality, the 7,400 just sticks around, and he can't pay off the liability until he pays off the 7,400. So in other words, this doesn't go anywhere. The question is, do you amortize it? Is it going to have interest and fees to it because you do add it to the balance, or does it linger without any interest and fees? And this is a concept that happens in non-performing loans as well, right? So the total payoff for him is going to be, it's not exactly 32,000, but there's a portion of this that's going to get added to his balance, and that's how he would have a free and clear house, right? The only way he gets to a total payoff.
Right. So we're talking about a separate agreement then for the arrearage is just over and above what we've got going. That would take him out.
Yeah, a lot of servicers don't do a formal agreement with that. So so I wanted to just make sure that we're clear on that. So there's this idea of an agreement. He's going to pay X amount of dollars, moving forward, but it's not necessarily some documented plan that they're going to write up and issue. And with that, you have to be careful, right? So if he's still paying his 308 and $1.30, so it's $4.38, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
As long as he's paying that, he's not defaulting, right? So he might miss this payment depending on what it is from time to time. But as long as he's making the minimal payment due, the $4.30, then you're at least in a spot where he's advancing forward. That there's going to be a balloon event. And this isn't the $700, whatever that payment ends up being, whatever that add-on payment ends up being. It's not causing him to slip into default, right? You can't default him on that, right?
Right.
And again, so he's going to have he should have a much better looking statement the more he chunks out of that. And he's going to feel like he's starting to actually catch up, because I think when we deal with these lower level loans, this psychology that you have with these people is important, right? This isn't as we could probably presume, the guy's not he's not pulling down tons of cash a month, so he's living on macaroni and cheese,
mm-hmm.
right? Or whatever, unfortunately. So we want to give him some of his, we want to give him some of his power back so that he can pay you properly. So that's the way I would treat it. I would say, look, I want to see the ongoing 430, and then I want to see a plan for whatever this 743 is. And the 743, he just paid this. I moved it already. He just paid that 2,700, right? So.
Yeah.
Look, that's a decent chunk of what that 743 is. So he came up with the money. So maybe, what we're showing here, what was 5 years?
Well, but he came up with the money by not paying his mortgage for 2 years, so he was able to bank a little bit.
Yeah, there's a little. So I'm not clear on that with the data that we have, because again, his account shows he's current.
Right.
So if I'm the borrower, I'm going, oh, what are you talking about? It's I'm due for September. So was that sum of money a function of him not paying his bills, or is that sum of money just actual ancillary income that he is capable of making? I would lean in this particular case, without looking at his accounting history, I'd lean a little bit like he's got some disposable income that he can allocate to this. Whether that's whatever, $2,000 over the course of 3 or 4 months, that is certainly going to get you paid. That's going to take this 7,400 and pay that back much faster, right? So instead of being 5 years, maybe he can pay it back in 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Maybe he gets a good tax return, whatever.
Right. Right.
So how would you approach that as far as the servicer? Were they going to do something like that, or they're not going to be involved?
No, you probably got to go direct that. They're not going to come up with that on their own.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'd call them and be like, look, here's how we want to treat this. Because again, I think the idea is that 300 he's making, they're allocating what we don't understand with the data that we have is how this 300 is being allocated, nor do we understand how that 2,700 is going to apply to his account, right? So this 2,700, the first thing I would do is get that applied, so this 27 will pass through you. So by the way, that's a windfall for you.
Oh,
right?
yeah. It was attorney fees I didn't have to pay.
Well,
Yeah.
when I'm looking at the bottom of the account activity, and I see a $1,200 attorney fee charge, and was there some of the attorney fee bill that they wouldn't post because they didn't think it was reimbursable or recoverable?
Well, Daniel was a little remiss on sending me a bill. I just got it. So.
Okay.
Yeah, there's another $1,200 in there that plus a $400 or $500 foreclosure referral fees.
Okay. All right. So it's not that. So you're not in danger of giving that to the borrower and then having to come back and claw it back. So you got to make sure you get that paid invoice in for them to add.
That's gonna. Yeah. That's. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So the exit strategy, because we're just broke an hour and a half. This is we gotta come. So the exit strategy here is take some payments for a while, work out something. In discussion, you'll know with him whether or not you got a chance of getting this arrears chipped in, and the other side is I would assume he's smart enough to make the 6 payments, and if he's going to go and try to do you again, he's going to wait till after that.
Sure.
And then you go through a 90-day cycle, you think, to get it, or how long did this take the first time?
The first time, well, we had to continue it because the judge decided he wants somebody there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it could take 3 months.
Okay. All right. So you could be in month 6, go into default, and then potentially recover the property in month 11.
Right.
Okay. And its value is better than your basis. So
it's 25 or so probably, depending on what kind of shape it's in.
And he owes he owes 26, so you're okay there at a sale.
Yeah.
Or like you said, you're back in the rental business again.
Yeah.
Or selling it to another buyer.
Yeah. I actually like that idea. I just instead of trying to not get out of the rental business, I want to scale it back a bit.
Yeah, no, and get back to so. Okay. All right. Any other insights from Mr. DePaoli?
No, it is. It is what it is. I think
Okay.
we beat the hell out of that horse.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Yes, we abused this one. All right. All right. So let's get rid of your screen share. Wrap up. And so here's the commercial. If anybody needs anything, you can get a hold of Dion at sdxs.us, secureddebtexchange.us. And you can find Jim on Bigger Pockets or in the LA Notes group. And you can find me in all those same places too. All right, Jim, I really appreciate you taking a minute to let us dissect what you're doing. And I'm sure that it's going to help other folks.
It's helped me a lot. Thank you.
Right.
Both you guys.
All right. Okay.
Pleasure.
Thanks, fellas. See you.
Thanks, folks.
All
All
right.
right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.